Once again, thank you all very much for attending this session this morning. So today we will be having our second session of Selling Safetica. For those of you who had attended last time, a few months back, we did our first session, which was specifically tailored towards how to sell Safetica and just a few bits and pieces within that. There was a bit regarding some qualification in there as well as something regarding the partner portal. Now, today we're going to be focusing, as we can see, on selling Safetica, but within this, and I can skip to my next slide, the agenda for today is to go over how to quickly find out which Safetica product suits the prospect best. Now, because we do have Safetica 1 and Safetica Next, we want to make it as understandable as possible as to which solution fits the clients or the prospects best, because sometimes it's clear and just sometimes it's not. So we'd like to take the chance to go over this. And secondly, would like to run through two model situations for qualifying these deals. Of course, Safetica 1 and for Safetica Next. And finally, then we will be going over some new documents and tools that you can use for qualifying these deals for Safetica 1 and for Safetica Next. So without any further ado, I will begin with how to quickly find out which Safetica product suits the prospects or clients best. Now, there's just a few quick questions that you can ask the client, or either before you have a call or while you potentially do have a call in the beginning, to understand which solution fits them best. So with Safetica 1, as we know, this is an on-premise solution. So the client does need to have some servers either on their premise or in the cloud, or it can be a hybrid. Either, let's say, they can have some Windows servers on premise, they can even have Linux servers on premise, although we would not be able to cover the Linux servers, but you can still run Safetica 1 on the back end on a Linux server. Alternatively, if they have some cloud storage or some cloud server space, such as AWS or Azure or something along these lines, Safetica can also be hosted in the cloud as well. That's not a problem. And of course, they can have a hybrid mixture as well. If they do have a setup like this already, then Safetica 1 can be the answer. They can go with that solution if they do have their servers on premise, or if they have them in AWS or something along these lines. If they do not want to have anything hosted themselves, if they do not want to deal with that and they want to have a service which is already in the cloud and provided to them, then that would be Safetica Next, because Safetica Next is our cloud solution which is hosted in the cloud already. It is hosted in Azure. And it's at the end of the day, if people don't want to deal with any of the infrastructure on their end, then of course we have you covered with Safetica Next. Now, another question to ask, which is a very vital question as well when determining if the client would be looking for something like Safetica 1 or Safetica Next, is how large is their IT admin staff? Now, if it's somebody, of course, it all depends on the size of the organization. Now, let's say the organization is anywhere from 50 to 100 employees, users, endpoints, what have you. If it's roughly that size and somebody says, yeah, I'm just a one-man show, I do all the IT admin work, Safetica 1 can fit for that, although it just depends on the workload. Safetica Next is a far lighter solution and a far easier solution to manage than Safetica 1. So if somebody generally mentions they only have maybe 1 or 2 IT admin staff, then Safetica Next would most likely be the best bet for that individual. Of course, if they are looking to have, or rather if they do have maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, however many other IT admin staff, then that sounds like something more along the lines of Safetica 1. Generally, if they have a larger IT admin staff, that means the environment is larger, therefore there will be more endpoints and all of these sort of things as well, which would also lead us down the road to talk about Safetica 1. So if it's a smaller IT admin staff, then again, Safetica Next is most likely the best bet. If their IT admin staff is larger, then Safetica 1 is most likely the best bet. Of course, with all these questions, you just need to cross-reference the answers you have from each and figure out at the end of the day which one makes the most sense. Thirdly, a very good another question to understand is how granular would they like to go with the reporting settings and the features of their DLP solution from Safetica. If they are looking to be very in-depth, very granular, very specific, then something like Safetica 1, or rather Safetica 1, would be the best fit for them, as it does have the most features and functionality and granularity when it comes to the settings, reportings, and features. Now, for Safetica Next, if they're, let's say they're just looking to have a general overview as to what's going on, they use the, let's say, most common or most often used tools for DLP solutions, then Safetica Next would be the best bet. I like to say that Safetica Next will cover, let's say, 80% of scenarios. And also, of course, Safetica 1 will cover all of them. It just depends, of course, on the breadth of the installation and what they are looking to do exactly. But again, if there's that 20% where if they're looking to have that specificity, then Safetica 1 is the choice. Again, if they're not looking to be too specific and too granular, then Safetica Next would be a better choice. And now this is, again, I mean, these are all very, very important questions to understand. This one might be one of the more important, even though it is here listed as number 4, but still, how many users or endpoints are they looking to cover? Now, currently as it stands, Safetica Next can cover roughly 500 users per company. For example, as a reseller, partner, or MSP, what have you, you would have your list of clients within the Safetica hub. Now, within the hub, underneath that, you would have your clients. Now, underneath that client, Safetica Next can currently cover roughly 500 users. If it would be an environment larger, there are some workarounds to make this work. But again, we recommend staying 500 users and less for Safetica Next. Now, for Safetica 1, it can be anywhere from 10, 20, 30 users, endpoints. Again, they're roughly generally quite similar, up to 4,000 users or endpoints per let's say instance of Safetica 1. So once you would get over that 4,000 users or endpoints, then you would need to spin up an additional server or virtual machine or something along these lines to deal with the capacity. But Safetica 1 can go far beyond 4,000 as well. So again, if it's a larger environment, then Safetica 1 would make more sense. If it's a, let's say, smaller environment or just nothing, let's say, crazy, then Safetica Next would make the most sense. And finally here, another great one to understand, how much integration with third-party solutions is needed from the product. Now, with Safetica 1, again, this is our solution that we've been working on for 12 plus years now, and it does have the most features and functionality, and this includes, of course, integration with third-party solutions. Now, if somebody's looking for some integration with some SEM tools, I mean, SEM tools is more often than not the integration that is required, or if they're looking for integration with Fortinet, for example, or integration with Netrix or whomever, then Safetica 1 is the preferred solution. If they really don't have anything they would like to integrate with the DLP solution, then Safetica Next would be the option. Again, Safetica Next covers the majority of scenarios, and then there's just these scenarios, kind of the outlying scenarios, which are generally more so for enterprise space or large SMB. And again, this is where Safetica 1 would come in. So I hope that has been clear. Again, after this presentation, we will be sending out the PowerPoint deck, and it will have some of the answers written in under these bullet points as well. So let me just continue here. And now we will be going over the 2 model situations for qualifying Safetica 1 or Safetica Next deals. So let's get going with this. So for situation 1, now you have a client who is looking for data loss prevention. Fantastic. The call is arranged with the client. During this call, the representative asks the following questions. Are you looking to have an on-premise solution, or would you prefer to have the solution hosted in the cloud? Also, how many users are in your environment? Again, we can see from these few questions here. This were some of the questions that were mentioned on the previous slide. And again, with these questions, this should point you in the right direction originally. And then we can just kind of take things from there. But luckily enough, in this situation, the client responds with, we do not have our own servers on premise. We mostly work remote, and we have instances of any servers on premise. I'm sure for some databases, maybe in the cloud or something, but apparently that's not really of importance to them. And they mostly work remotely, again, which is where Safetica Next would fit nicely. And they are also looking for a cloud-based solution, have 200 users and 1 IT admin. So again, this makes the most sense to go with Safetica Next because of their given situation. Now, there can be also sometimes this maybe can be Safetica 1, but of course you do need to ask more questions than just this. You would need to understand, of course, if they do maybe have some storage in AWS or something along these lines, maybe that could be done. Of course, you need to understand the, let's say, depth that they're looking to go in when it comes to a DLP solution. Depending on that, it can be 1 or Next. But I would say, and also, of course, it's integrations as well. But with these quick questions, that should get you to the right place. So now going on to our next situation. So again, you have a client who is looking for a data loss prevention solution. Awesome. Call is arranged with the client. During this call, the rep asks these crucial questions. Are you looking to have an on-premise solution, or would you prefer to have the solution hosted in the cloud? Also, how many users are in your environment? The client responds with, we have our own servers on premise and we have roughly 1,200 users. Based on this response, apologies, then that would be Safetica 1. And it would be Safetica 1 because, again, the client mentioned they have their own servers on premise and the client has 1,200 users. Now, again, this can, of course, this sounds to be Safetica 1 right off the bat. Of course, it can also be Safetica Next. Not really, but if they really would like to have a cloud-based solution, there are some workarounds that could be done. You could segment the client into, let's say client ABC1, client ABC2 in the hub. That is a workaround, but and again, generally speaking, in this sort of a scenario, this would be Safetica 1. Of course, there are further questions that should be asked, and we will get to some of these questions a bit later on. And let me just go to our next slide here. Oh, I lost my mouse somehow. Okay, there we go. And finally, actually, we have a bonus round. So situation 3. Good news, everybody. We have a client who is looking for data loss prevention. Again, client arranged a call with the client, or rather a call is arranged with the client. And during this call, the representative asks the following: are you looking to have an on-premise solution? Would you prefer to have the solution hosted in the cloud? And how many users are in your environment? The client responds with, we prefer to have things in the cloud. We do have our own servers hosted in AWS, and we have roughly 400 users. Based off of this response, this one's a bit tricky. They mentioned that they do prefer to have things in the cloud, which should equal Safetica Next. They mentioned that they do have servers hosted in AWS, which could be used for Safetica 1, and they have roughly 400 users. That, of course, also can be 1 or Next. Now, there's a few more questions that do need to be asked to understand really what solution would fit them best. And the questions that would be asked would be, how large is your IT admin staff? If they just have 1 person, potentially Next would be a better option. It'd be much more easy to manage for 400 users rather than something for Safetica 1 potentially. Also, how granular do they need to go with these settings and the features and the functionality and the reporting and all of this? If they are looking to be very specific and have all the information they can possibly have, then Safetica 1 would be the option. If they are looking maybe not to be so granular and just have some general overview as to what is going on with the data that is basically trying to leave the premise, then Safetica Next could be the answer. Also, I know for many of us, UABA can be an important thing to understand, and also for clients to have or potentially not have. So in this situation, also a good question to ask is, would they like to have the UABA functionality? And for those of you who don't know the UABA functionality, it is the User and Entity Behavioral Analytics, which is built, or rather it's a module which can be added on to Safetica 1. Now, with that, it only works with Safetica 1. We do not have any UABA functionalities with Safetica Next. That is purely Safetica 1 right now. So if they wanted to have this UABA functionality, they would need to go with Safetica 1. If they don't care, again, then Safetica Next. And finally, the third-party integration. Do they need any third-party integration? As we had gone over prior, if they do not, Safetica Next is fine. If they do, then Safetica 1 would be the best bet. And from here, now we will go on to some new documents and tools that you can use for qualifying deals. Now, these are already uploaded into our brand cloud, and let me just go into there quickly. And just in the meantime, before I do, I'm just having a check at the questions. So I can see we have a question from Raleigh, and it looks like, does the reporting and policies work in Safetica 1 for remote endpoints? Depends what you mean by remote endpoints, but yes, if it's endpoints that are not on, let's say, the same network as everybody else or on the company network, that's no problem. For example, individuals who, let's say, would be working from home or something like this, not within the company environment, yeah, everything is still being reported back and forth. You're getting logs, and new policies and things like this can be enacted on the devices if they are not on the same network. I hope that answers your question. And looks like other than that, nothing here at the moment. So I will skip into then the new documents and tools that we can use for deal qualification. So we can see here, now we have, where did I want to go? Here we are. So within Brand Cloud, hopefully all of this is familiar, or at least you've seen Brand Cloud, but let's just go back to the beginning here. So we see underneath in Brand Cloud, we have our partner materials. So we can go in here, and depending on what you're looking for, of course, we can go for either 1 or for Next. If we go into 1, then we go into sales materials. So we can click in here. We can see there's many other good, useful things here as well. But one thing we can use is deal qualification questions. So if we go into here and let's say we click on this. So for Safetica 1, we have this quick qualification guide. And this will definitely get you pointed in the right direction. Of course, if you start with this, that should also help you to understand a little bit as to which solution will fit best. But again, for Safetica 1 specifically, we do have this quick qualification guide. There's a short version to begin with, and then there's a much more lengthy and in-depth version as well, which goes over many, many, many things. Highly recommend to use this when anybody would be qualifying any sort of deals. It is very helpful, and potentially if you might miss a question or two, which everybody does every now and again, this can be a great, just a quick lookup guide as to what should I be asking. Now going back from there, so that was Safetica 1 qualification, and we have some cheat sheets here as well, which can be used to a degree. But let's go back. And so prior we were here in Safetica 1, and now we will be going into Safetica Next. Again, product materials. And we have some, of course, more good things here as well. And I just saw this. I believe it's in the cheat sheets. Yep. So in here we have Safetica Next selling point cheat sheet, which of course is very good. Safetica 1 and Next positioning cheat sheet. And finally this one, this Safetica Next versus 1 qualification cheat sheet. So this is what I would like to go over right now, because this is something, again, that I find quite useful, and hopefully you will as well. So we can see for Safetica 1 and Safetica Next, and once we go through here, we can see for SMBs, let's say 30 to 500 users, again, Safetica Next makes most sense, sub 500. Safetica 1, 200 plus seats is preferred. Of course, it can go smaller than this, but again, preferred versus not preferred. Otherwise, of course, we would like to go with Safetica Next. For mid-market or enterprise, let's say 500 plus, again, there are some workarounds which can be done for Safetica Next to accommodate these sort of users. But again, generally speaking, that would be for Safetica 1. And companies with servers, without their own servers, Next is clearly the option because it's hosted in the cloud. 1, they do need some sort of a server either on-premise or in the cloud. And of course, I can keep reading through this and going through, but again, I believe you get the idea as to what we're trying to get at here. And generally speaking, when it comes to Safetica Next and Safetica 1, it's not necessarily solutions to be compared, let's say, feature to feature. That's not the idea of these solutions. Of course, if they both were in the same environments, if they were both on-premise or both in the cloud, sure, then comparing side to side could potentially make sense. But given that one is a on-premise solution, which is meant to have the most features and the most functionality and cover the most use cases, then that is in its own, let's say, league to a degree. Safetica Next, that is to be the more easy to use, simple to set up, easy to understand, and you don't need to have any sort of real resources on the client end other than potentially an IT admin. Of course, I don't even need that. If you are looking to provide managed services, then you can manage that environment yourself rather than the client managing on their end. And of course, that is the preferred method, and that is a way to gain more and more clients, is to be providing the managed service for Safetica Next. It makes it much more attractive. But we can see, just going down through here, we have some more things. And finally, this is just a quick flow chart. And let me see if I can zoom out of this a little bit just to, yeah, there we go. So what we can see here, and it's generally speaking starting in this tab or this space right here. Now, either this question or this question, either do they prefer SaaS, or basically how big is your IT management staff? These can be swapped. This depends on where you would like to start. But for example, let's say is the SMB company with 1 or 2 IT managers covering all tasks. If so, then move down to here. Of course, if not, then go to here. And we can see there is a clear structure as to yes and no. It can look a little confusing, but at the end of the day, it is relatively simple. But either understanding how many IT managers do you have, or how many IT admin staff do you have, as well as do they prefer SaaS or do they prefer on-premise? These 2 questions will get you most often than not in the right direction, and as well as the size as well. But I believe this should be relatively self-explanatory. Of course, if any of this is not, please feel free to reach out to your account managers or whomever you would be in contact with at Safetica. We're always more than happy to help with any questions or any concerns that anybody may have in regards to deal qualification or just really anything in general. We're here to help and happy to help. So yeah, this is going to be the conclusion then of the presentation. And now I would like to open some things up and see if there are any more questions that we do have today. And I can see we have a question from Costas. And Jose, we don't mind, but I will read this out. What would you recommend when the customer has roughly 20 machines and wants DLP policies without having his own server or no WS services? Tricky questions. So when it comes to if somebody has 20 machines and wants DLP, so that would be Safetica Next. Now, as it currently stands, we would not sell, let's say, 20 users or 20 licenses or 20 machines worth of the solution. We do have a minimum cap at 30. Now, if it is somebody looking for 20, of course, then at the end of the day, we would just have to charge for that 30 opposed to 20. But hopefully that wouldn't be a deal breaker. And at the end of the day, it is generally speaking, more inexpensive than doing a similar sized opportunity or deal for Safetica 1. So in this instance, if somebody does have roughly 20 machines and they want the DLP policies, then Safetica Next is the way to go. We still do have the classification of files and also, of course, the blocking of the files, as well as reporting as to any, let's say, interesting actions which are going on. So of course, it can still do a lot of the functionality that one can. It's just that one does have that more, let's say, granular and specific ways of doing things. So I hope that answered your question, Kostas. And it looks like those are all the questions that we do have for now. And if anybody else would like to ask any more questions, please feel free to do so. We'll just wait a few more minutes to see if there will be any questions coming through. Otherwise, we are getting quite close to the end of our session, which is at the half hour. And I see, so we got a question from Richard. If a customer has 30 seats and wants to add 5 more, is this possible? Yes, it is indeed. That is not a problem at all. And when it comes to either one or next, if somebody's looking to do an increase on a license, that's not very difficult. Not difficult at all, really. So for one, because it is billed in either 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, let's say after 5 months or 6 months, somebody would like to add 5 more seats. That's just prorated and added onto the price for the remainder of the term. Basically, just take the price per user for the initial term, and then you would just bill that out with the remaining months. Yeah, some math there, but nothing crazy. And same difference with Next. We can do the same, not a problem at all. No minimum. For the minimum, for the increases, off the top of my head, I actually don't recall there being any minimums for the increases. For the initial orders, we do have some minimums, but when it comes to increases, I don't believe we do have any minimums for that. I've never come across anything less than 5, I don't think. Actually, maybe it's been 2 once, but this was a while ago. But I don't believe that would be a problem at all. Of course, to understand more about this, either speak with your account managers or whomever you would speak with at Safetica, and they would be more than happy to answer that from there. Okay, so looks like that is that for the questions that we currently have. And I'll just let this go, but it looks like we will be hitting the half hour just about now. So anybody, if there would be any further questions you would like to ask, now is the time. Otherwise, thank you all very much for attending. I don't see anything else coming in right now. So yeah, I suppose then now is the time to close this webinar down for today. So again, thank you all very much for joining this session this morning. It's a pleasure having you. And also, just to make sure you guys are aware as well, later on today, we will be having another session going over this once again. If you would like to attend again, fantastic. Or if maybe somebody else from the organization is not available now, but would be available later, that can be an option as well. Again, thank you all very much for your time today, and thank you for your interaction as well and your questions. Much appreciated, and we'll talk with you soon. Have a good one. Thank you.